My name is Sophie Edwards. I was the artistic director and executive director of Four Elements Living Arts. We have a range of works that are really interesting on the trail, and I think in terms of the long term, the goal to have people engage with them, I don't know. At some point you don't know how people are going to respond, but I do know that there are a lot more people that are coming onto the trails because of the works. And well, I think I was inspired by Justin Sinclair saying that artists and art have a role to play in this process, because we don't know what it's going to look like. We're not there yet. We're not at reconciliation. We're barely at truth, right? We've not been there. We don't know what it's going to look like. And art and artists are visionaries. Quinn Smallboy, his piece is along the main drag, and we had originally had planned to have him further up the river on the Cascade Gardens, where it was a beautiful place with a little cascading water coming down, and I thought it'd be really beautiful there in the winter with the colors of his drums coming out. But he really wanted it somewhere where kids could play with it, and he actually asked us to move it if we could find a different site, and luckily that was public land and we could move it. And so he installed those, and he saw the drum as obviously a very important symbol. He's Cree from up north. So there were 4 drum circles, but they're not the 4 colors of the medicine wheel, the traditional medicine wheel, or the Ojibwe medicine wheel anyway. And they're not Cree colors symbolically. They're his own colors that he associated with them. Ted Fullerton is a quite seasoned artist. He's got public commissions all over the place, and he won the largest commission of the series, and his piece is centered on the main drag as you're coming in, so that when you see it, it's these 3 figures. So it's the tallest and largest of the series. They're actually, I think, 30 feet tall. There are 3 people that are moving up towards the sky, and there's a young person, a man and a woman. They each have their own space, and they're moving together or not together, but they're all moving sort of skyward. And so he sees those as the 3 cultures, Indigenous, French, and English, as well as man, woman, child. There's a whole series of symbols about the 3s, past, present, future. Robert Cram's work is a series of 3 deer. You could walk by them and just see them as 3 deer installed on the trail, but when you spend time with them, there's some really interesting things that goes on in that piece, and some of them are more subtle than others. So Robert's piece, the series of 3 deers, looks at what's extracted and put into place. So again, this idea of settlers and extraction and displacement, but he's also looking at it in terms of environmental issues and what we take out to put in.
My name is Catherine Corbier, and I'm from Chigang First Nation. So the piece consists of 3 what are supposed to look like trees. 2 of them are the boughs or the shape of the Great Lakes. And when designing this piece, just kind of thinking of water, trying to put the 2 together, and just laying them out, we realized that the boughs of the Great Lakes actually look like boughs of a pine tree. So it just kind of made sense to make it look like a cluster of trees. Initially, we were going to use stainless steel, and then when thinking of weight, it made sense to use aluminum, as it will not corrode. I don't even think it's. Sometimes you forget about it, but then one of the other artists mentioned that he often looks at Google Earth, and will try and see if his images are on Google Earth, and then that's when it hits him. So I've looked a couple times, but I haven't taken a photo yet. But I have gone a few times to look at it to just kind of make sure, tweak the nuts, make sure everything's still sturdy. No, and this is where I struggle, because I consider myself a fabricator, and I have a lot of respect for the other artists because of their ability to visualize a project. I don't put art first, I think of the fabrication first. So how am I going to create this versus what would be cool? I'm a welder by trade, so after I learned how to weld, then I found a mentor locally here, a machinist, and he kind of taught me how to use the CAD software and the plasma table and just kind of put the two things together. And then from furniture came, I guess, a few art pieces. But again, I struggle with wanting to be in production what I don't consider art, and then do admire being an artist. Well, what's nice about it is its background is water. It is what it's supposed to represent. Like when we were giving the unveiling, I said that you can look at a sculpture and think it's beautiful, but what the true beauty is what it's in front of. It's funny because right after the sculpture was finished, I kind of was burnt out for 2 weeks after just pushing and pushing and pushing. And then I struggled to find creativity, and I had work coming in, but it was jobs like signs, brackets, like just the things I was doing every day prior to the sculpture. So trying to get back into that was a struggle because this was so huge for me as my first one. But yeah, for sure, I see myself pursuing projects like this in the future. And Four Elements has been great as to forwarding me other opportunities out there for public art.
My name is Human. So I'm originally from Iran, in the city of Kerman. I immigrated to Canada last year. First of all, I started my education in the field of sculpture. So it's a vast field of working in 3D space. But one of the most important branches of sculpture is public sculpture or public art. Maybe the first trigger for me to go over this field was the scale and the size of the sculptures. People are looking for actually having a very even short time of rest when they're actually watching a public art or sitting beside it or walking around it. So this artwork is called the Globe. By looking at the name, it doesn't talk about the island necessarily, but when you go over the more details and looking for the some familiar patterns and forms in the artwork, you will notice that these patterns are captured from the island somehow. I mean, whether they are natural patterns, plants, or some old fossils that have been found here in this island. A very important part of this process for me was that the community of Manitoulin Island and Kagawong, they had a great role in these patterns because they suggested to use some of these patterns. Like, for example, the fossils. I didn't necessarily know about fossils here, so they directed me to that part. So I started to take research into these forms and patterns. So as you can see, I didn't blueprint them. I was inspired by those forms, and then I manipulate them in the computer to reach some kind of deformation that I usually use in my works. Yeah, so the material is a stainless steel, and it took me around 4 months from the beginning till the installation to be done, the whole project. And around 7 people helped me over fabrication of this artwork, because people have their own way of thinking about the artwork, and also the observing the world. They have their own way to observe the world. I want the people to actually feel that this is something from them and this is theirs. This is something that is made for them, by being inspired with them again and their lifestyle and their environment.